Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I'm glad to see everybody this morning. Hey, look at this. So as Michael mentioned in her beautiful prayer, this is the month of Back to Basics. And what we teach and practice here is as much a philosophy as it is a spiritual tradition. And the go-to operating manual for what we teach is a book written by Ernest Holmes called The Science of Mind and Spirit. And he wrote the book in the late 20s, I believe. And it's heavy duty. It's highly repetitive. It's archaic language. And it's brilliant. The thing about it is, though, is it only says a couple of things, and it says them over and over in a million different ways, and I am reminded once again as I reviewed it that what we teach is really, really simple. So the first 4 chapters of that book that we call the textbook are called The Thing Itself, meaning God, What It Does, how it works, and how to use it. Ding, 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 ding. So what we're talking about this week is what it does, and this is really, really simple. For those of you that were here last week, I talked about the idea that the divine, other names that we often use for it are divine mind, consciousness with a capital C, intelligence with a capital I. So it's this unseen something. And in order to tie that piece and this week's piece together, I want to read you a quote from Max Planck. Max Planck won the Nobel Prize for Physics, and I think it was about 1917, sometime in the late teens. And he said this in a speech in 1944. Remember, this is a hardcore scientist guy. As a man who has devoted his whole life to the most clear-headed science, the study of matter, I can tell you as a result of my research about atoms this much. There is no matter as such. All matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force which brings the particle of an atom to vibration and holds this most minute solar system of the atom together. We must assume behind this force the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. The mind is the matrix of all matter. So what this hardcore scientist is saying that studies material life, his particular area was physics, is that his research convinced him that behind all matter is mind. So it's consciousness itself. And that is precisely what we teach in the Science of Mind and Spirit. That the unseen becomes the seen, and that is the process of creation itself. So when we ask ourselves what it does, what does God as mind, as intelligence, as the divine, what does it do? It does one single thing as far as I can tell, or one thing worth mentioning in the world according to Chris Terry. What it does is create. It creates. And every single tradition, I think I mentioned this last week as well, every single tradition talks about the divine as the creator. We talk about the divine as the creator and the creation, right? Because how do I say this? This is so simple and it's always so difficult for me to talk about. Okay, so let's go back to here's an example. We're going to go back again this week to the Big Bang. And there was nothing, and in an instant, the entire cosmos was brought into being. Or the potential for the entire cosmos. All the building blocks of the entire cosmos So the unseen became the seen like that. And again, I can't do it justice with words. This is really a Prozac experience. It's just a huge, huge idea. So the unseen became the seen, or the touchable, the manifest as we would call it. And that is the process of creation. And there's a Sufi quote that I've used before, and I'm going to use it again to illustrate something. So the universe, or God, does one thing, is one thing. It creates, and it is creation. So this is what the Sufi poets say. God sleeps in the rock, dreams in the plant, stirs in the animal, and awakens in man. So we're going to go back to the Big Bang. Boom, in an instant, all of the building blocks that are here today in this room came into existence. Things slowed and cooled, and then we have rocks and inanimate objects. God sleeps in the rock, right? There's no life per se yet. So you go on, I think it's like 4.3 billion years or something crazy like that. And all of a sudden, where there was no life but there was stuff, the stuff came alive. And then it had the building blocks of life in it. Then we have plants. So now we have God that sleeps in the rock and dreams in the plant. So we have the awakening of life, life itself. Very, very basic forms of life, but life. Go along another lots of billions of years, and the life becomes animate. So in other words, where there was only things that couldn't move, but they were alive, they reproduced, then things started moving. Right? So eventually that became fish, the fish came to land, and that's the point at which God stirs in the animal. So in these life forms that are now actually up and walking around, God is stirring. Everybody with me so far? Then the last part of the quote is that God awakens in man. So what does that mean? We may not be the only species that can do this. We don't know. But there are very few. And this that I'm talking about is that we can actually turn around and look at the entire Big Bang or Big Blossom, the entire course of evolution, and we can look at ourselves. This quality is known as self-awareness. This is an amazing thing. So the divine has become self-aware in humankind and perhaps a few other species. Before this, life was just moving in the general direction. It was being created. It was opening itself up to higher complexity, higher consciousness, but it couldn't turn around and look at itself. So another way to see this is if you look at a little baby, the little baby doesn't know that there's a difference between you and me. It's just, its whole world is one undifferentiated ball of bliss. And then there comes a point where the baby, for those of you that have raised children, you'll know this, one day the baby goes, yes. And it's like, it's just like this huge moment where it's like, oh, I've got it, right? And then maybe 3 weeks later, the baby's like, right? And there's a new quality of awareness emerging, because now this baby, like, oh wow, there's this thing, and then like there's things wiring up, and there's some relationship between this and that, and so this awareness expands. And then there comes a point between, say, 2 and 3, where this child realizes that it's actually a separate self. It's a separate self. And that is the birth of a separate self-awareness, right? And so you keep expanding that, and this capacity to be self-aware gets to the point where we're actually God in skin, being aware of itself and being aware of its own creation. Does that make sense? This is an unbelievable thing. And what's amazing about it is that what it does, what God does, is create. And the creation has become so sophisticated that it awakens to itself. And then, this general characteristic of creation couples with our individual ability to participate in the process. So now it's called co-creation, right? So from the point of the Big Bang all the way forward, there was a general direction, but now each of us in our own lives and in our collective life, we're actually influencing the direction of creation. We're co-creating. This is really good news. This is also really bad news. But I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about the good news. Oh, I felt like I'm going to tell you all about the good news. I feel like I should whip out my Bible. Okay. All right. So we human beings have the capacity to co-create. The power has been there all the time. The power of creation has been there. But now, to that power, we're adding our choice to the process. This is a little poem from Hafiz, who also is a Sufi poet. Every child has known God, not the God of names, not the God of don'ts, not the God who ever does anything weird, but the God who knows only 4 words and keeps repeating them, saying, "Come dance with me. Come dance." This power is saying, "Come dance with me. Come dance with me. Come do the dance of creation with me." And it's saying it over and over and over again. So here's a piece of the good news and the bad news. See, creation is happening all the time. And because we're conscious, we can apply our consciousness to it and co-create consciously with awareness. But if we're not conscious, it's still creating. So that's the good news, bad news, because what that means essentially is that we can partner with this creative process in the direction of our choices or not. Another way of saying that, you can choose or it will be chosen for you. So if we don't choose, what is being created? Or if we're not making choices about how to partner with the power itself, then we're creating out of something that we may not want to be creating our lives out of. So let me give you an example. If our part in the creative process is to bring our consciousness to it, and our consciousness is the sum total of our beliefs and attitudes and thoughts and feelings, and we are not aware of what we're intending, we're not aware of our beliefs, we're not aware of where we're directing our feelings or our thoughts, then it could be that what's creating my life is the sense of failure I felt at 4 years old because I couldn't teach myself how to ride a bicycle. Now that sounds absurd, but what I'm trying to illustrate is if you're not creating consciously, then you are probably creating out of old ideas and old habits. And this happens on a personal level, and it also happens on the collective level. Right? So right now, what we're seeing is this collective co-creation in the country, in the world, that says that I'm a member of this religion, political party, race, team, tribe, and you're a member of that one. And we've co-created this notion that one has to win and the other one has to lose. We've co-created this notion that there is something separate between me and thee. Right? Do you see that all of this was created to some degree unconsciously? And we create unconsciously in our lives until we wake up and become self-aware enough to say, yeah, no, I don't really want to create my life out of a sense of failure that I got when I was 4. I don't want to create my life out of the sense of loneliness I felt at 13 and was excluded from the in-group my freshman year of high school. Do you see what I'm saying? We want to say, no, I want to create out of my choices, out of my conscious choices. Who do I want to be? What do I want to do? How do I want to live? How do I want to feel? And in order to do that, we have to practice it. We have to practice training our consciousness to co-create with the only power that there is in ways that we would like to experience. So I want to say this because I think it's important. Oftentimes when people find new thought, there is a confusion between creating or co-creating our realities with our consciousness and what I would call magical thinking. Magical thinking is something that small children do, where they think if they think a bad thought about their daddy and then something happens to daddy, they think they caused it, right? Magical thinking is, okay, well, if I just close my eyes and I jump, and Ernest Holmes actually uses this example in the textbook. He says, you do not create if you close your eyes and jump up and down and say, I'm rich, I'm rich, I'm rich, and then open your eyes and expect to be rich. That is magical thinking. But the continuous cultivation of your intentions, thoughts, feelings, and attitudes can create a life that you experience as abundant, that you experience as enoughness. And there's a big difference. One, co-creation is a lifelong spiritual practice. The other is magical thinking. Where that becomes important is because as aware human beings, I and you are aware that there are things that don't work in the world, right? There are things that don't work in the world. There are things that don't work in our country. Magical thinking says, well, if I look at it, it's going to make it worse. So I'm just going to go, there's no such thing. There's no such thing as poverty. There's no such thing as systemic bias. There's no such thing as child abuse. Okay. Because if I look at it, it's going to make it real. That's magical thinking. That's not co-creation. Co-creation is understanding that through a lifelong process or a 6-month process, depending on what you're working on, over a period of time, you can cultivate a consciousness of what is true, despite what it might look like sometimes. And that by your divine self, you can help bring about a reality that aligns with what we call spiritual truth. This is really important. Don't not look at your checkbook if you're in the red because you think it's going to make it worse. That's magical thinking. Okay. So we have this thing, this God, the thing itself, And it is expressing itself as each one of us. As each one of us. According to our awareness and our choices. Hopefully our conscious choices. And then somehow, and this is the gospel according to Chris Terry, because you won't find this in Ernest Holmes. At least not in the textbook. So the way that we think of the divine, God doesn't really have a plan for our lives like God would in some traditions. Like there's a plan and we have to figure it out and follow it. And if anything bad happens, then somehow that was part of the plan. And if something good happens, that was part of the plan. Yeah, that doesn't really fit. And yet, my own personal experience is that there's something uniquely patterned called Chris Terry. And I can find it. So it's not like God's plan for me, but it's like my own ideal path. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And you know when you hit on your path, don't you? It's like you become transparent to yourself. You're in your groove. Time disappears. And you feel pulled toward that thing. Come dance with me. So find a partner, because I want you to talk about this question with your partner for, let's say, 3 minutes apiece, total of 6 minutes. Because the way that, so God is saying, come dance with me. And we're not quite sure if it's a waltz, a cha-cha, a, marimba, who knows. But there is something specific. And this is the best way I know to identify, to find where you're pulled to dance, or what the dance is. You ask yourself this question: what can I not do? And yes, it's intentionally a double negative, right? So what's the thing that no matter what you try, you can't stop doing or you can't not do it? I'm not talking about addictions, not sex, drugs, rock and roll. Well, it might be rock and roll. That could fit for you. But there is something that you always go back to, or you always feel yourself pulled toward. Something you can't not do. So for me, I can't not be a teacher. I can't not talk about the things that I think will matter with people that I hope will talk with me about them. Right? I can't not do that. It doesn't matter where you put me or what I'm doing. I went to a silent Benedictine monastery about 10 years ago because I about lost my mind, and my beloved said, you need to get out of town, so I'm going to go on this silent retreat. You know what I did there? I found some people to talk to. It was me and the Church of Christ gay minister and the Dominican brother having theological conversations at 3 a.m. I know, it's tricky, but I did it. What is the thing you can't not do? So find a partner. I'll ring the bell. Actually, I'll give you a heads up when it's time. Your job, the reason that we're here is the discovery and the delivery of the authentic self. The authentic self, I think, is that thing that you can't not do. So you're in the discovery phase. And it doesn't matter if you're in the discovery or the delivery, there is a thing that the universe is seeking to do, and it can only do as you. No pressure. The good news is we're dealing with an infinite power and an infinite presence, and there's absolutely nothing you can do to diminish it. And yet, somehow paradoxically, if you don't do what you're here for, there's a sort of a kind of way that it's diminished. So, what I'm going to know for each of you that know what it is that you can't not do is that doors are opening where it appeared there were only walls. Flow is happening where it appeared there were only blocks. And for those of you in the discovery stage, what I'm going to be knowing for you is that Everywhere you look, the clues are right in front of you. Everywhere you look, the clues are right there. It's in conversation, it's in phone calls, it's in the middle of the book that you flip open randomly, it's in somebody's Facebook feed. It's everywhere you look. Right? Because there's only one power, and that power is moving, sweeping, nudging, compelling you in the direction of yourself. And so, your job is to let it do what it does, which is create, and to say yes for yourself. Let's pray. So breathing deeply. Remembering what an incredible privilege it is that life, that God, that Spirit, that the Holy itself is living in us and through each of us. And that thing that we call God, it doesn't need us to be good. It doesn't need us to be perfect. It just needs us to be who we are. Every child has known God, not the God of names, not the God of don'ts, not the God who ever does anything weird, but the God who knows only 4 words. Come dance with me. Come dance with me. Please, come dance with me. And so it is.